My name is Noah Carson, 32, and I've always been the responsible one in my family despite being the youngest. When my parents suggested a family vacation to Hawaii, promising it would be a real family bonding experience, I was genuinely excited. I had no idea that my credit card was about to become the unspoken centerpiece of our so-called family reunion. What started as a dream vacation quickly turned into a financial nightmare. Before I continue with this story, where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe if you want more stories about setting boundaries with family members who take advantage. Growing up in a middle-class neighborhood in Michigan, our family seemed normal from the outside. My dad Richard worked as a manager at a local manufacturing plant, while my mom Diane taught elementary school. We weren't rich, but we weren't struggling either. My sister Lindsay, 2 years older than me, was always the star of the family. She was outgoing, popular, and seemed to coast through life on her charm and good looks. I was different. Quieter, more analytical, more careful with everything including money. From an early age, I developed a strong work ethic, probably because I noticed how my parents treated Lindsay differently. While they celebrated her C+ grades and forgave her mishaps, I was held to a higher standard. Maybe they just expected more from me, or maybe they genuinely played favorites. Either way, it shaped who I became. By 16, I was working part-time jobs while maintaining straight A's. I saved most of what I earned, watching my bank account grow slowly but steadily. My parents seemed proud but also somewhat dismissive. Noah and his money, they joke at family gatherings. He counts every penny. It wasn't meant to be cruel, but it stung nonetheless. When college came around, the family dynamics became even more apparent. Lindsay got the full parent treatment for her education at a private liberal arts college. They covered her tuition, housing, meal plan, and even gave her spending money. Their justification was that she wasn't good with money and needed the support. For me, they contributed what they could, which I appreciated. But it covered less than half of my expenses at the state university where I studied computer science. "You're so responsible," they'd say. "We know you'll figure it out." And I did. I worked 30 hours a week while carrying a full course load, graduated with honors, and only had minimal student loans that I paid off within 3 years of graduating. After college, our paths diverged even more dramatically. Lindsay bounced between jobs, relationships, and cities, often needing financial bailouts from our parents. I landed a job at a promising tech startup, worked my way up, and eventually became a senior software engineer at a major tech company in Seattle. My financial situation improved dramatically, and I found myself in a position I never expected. I was the wealthy one in the family. That's when the subtle shift happened. My parents' attitude toward me changed from pride to something closer to entitlement. It started small. Dad would call about their water heater breaking, dropping hints about the expense until I offered to help. Mom would mention how they couldn't afford to visit Lindsay in California, sighing heavily until I suggested buying their tickets. These weren't large amounts at first, and I was happy to help. They had done their best raising us, even if they weren't perfect. But over time, the requests became more frequent and less apologetic. A loan for a new car that was never repaid. Contributions to home repairs that somehow doubled in cost. Birthday and Christmas gifts that became increasingly extravagant in their expectations. My sister caught on to this pattern too. Whenever she needed money, she'd call me directly instead of going through our parents. "You're doing so well," she'd say. "What's a few $1,000s to someone like you?" The implicit message was clear. My money wasn't really mine anymore. It had become family money. I tried setting boundaries. I created a budget for family assistance and stuck to it. I offered to help them create financial plans instead of just handing over cash. These attempts were met with guilt and emotional manipulation. "After all we did for you," was my mom's favorite phrase. Family helps family, was my dad's. Then came the vacation proposal. It was during a Sunday phone call. A ritual I maintained despite the increasing financial tension. Noah, honey, my mom said, her voice taking on that syrupy quality that usually preceded a request. Your father and I were thinking about a family vacation. All of us together, like when you kids were little. That sounds nice, I said cautiously. What did you have in mind? Well, she paused dramatically. We've always dreamed of going to Hawaii. The four of us, on the beach, reconnecting as a family. My dad's voice joined in from the extension. Son, we're not getting any younger. Who knows how many chances we'll have for a trip like this? It would mean the world to us. I felt a familiar mixture of warmth and wariness. The idea itself was appealing. Despite everything, I loved my family and treasured the good moments we shared. A vacation could be wonderful if approached correctly. I'd be happy to join, I said. We should start planning budgets and looking at options that work for everyone. There was a slight pause before my mom continued, her tone carefully calibrated. Well, we were hoping you might take the lead on this, Noah. You're so good with planning and finances. And there it was. The unspoken expectation that I would foot the bill. Still, I didn't immediately reject the idea. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe a vacation together was exactly what we needed to reset our relationship. Let me look into some options, I said. We can talk about how to split costs once I have some numbers. You're such a good son, my mom gushed. This is going to be the healing experience our family needs. Little did I know that the only thing that would need healing would be my bank account. The initial planning phase for our Hawaii vacation seemed reasonable enough. I researched options and presented my family with several packages at different price points. I suggested a moderately priced resort on Maui, reasonable flights with one connection, and a mix of planned activities and free time. The total came to about $3,000 per person for a week, which I thought was fair. This looks wonderful, my mom said during our video call to discuss the options. But I was reading about this other resort on the north shore of Kauai. It's supposed to be absolutely breathtaking. I looked it up while we were on the call. The resort she mentioned was nearly twice the price of the one I had suggested. That's quite a bit more expensive, I pointed out. Are we all comfortable with that increase? Well, my dad chimed in. If we're going all the way to Hawaii, we should do it right. This might be our only chance to experience this together. Lindsay, who had been quiet until now, suddenly became animated. Oh my God, that place has those private bungalows right on the water. I saw it on Instagram. Can we please stay there? I felt the familiar pressure building. If we go with this option, we're looking at closer to $5,000 per person. Is everyone prepared to contribute that amount? A silence fell over the call. My mother cleared her throat. Noah, honey, you know our retirement doesn't stretch that far. And Lindsay is still paying off her credit card debt from last year. What about the original option I suggested? I asked. That was more affordable. But it's not the same experience. My mom insisted. The whole point of this trip is to create special memories together. After an hour of discussion that felt more like gentle but persistent manipulation, I reluctantly agreed to the more expensive resort. I offered to pay my full share plus cover half of Lindsay's expenses, with the understanding that my parents would cover their portion and the other half of Lindsay's costs. You're such a blessing, my mom said. We raised such a generous son. The next red flag appeared when it came time to make the reservations. I had created a shared document with all the details and costs clearly outlined, with each person's financial responsibility specified. We should probably put the reservations on your credit card, my dad suggested. You have those travel points, right? Then we can just pay you our portions. I'd prefer if everyone handled their own bookings, I said. The resort and airline both allow separate payments for group bookings. But we'd lose out on all those points, my mother argued. Plus, it's so complicated to coordinate 4 separate reservations. What if we end up on different flights or in rooms far apart from each other? Lindsay joined in. Yeah, Noah, it makes more sense to do it all together. We'll pay you back, promise. Against my better judgment, I agreed to put the reservations on my credit card with the explicit agreement that everyone would transfer me their portion before the trip. I sent out the payment requests through a money transfer app the same day. 2 weeks passed, and no payments arrived. When I brought it up during our next call, the excuses began. We're just waiting for our tax refund, my dad explained. I had an unexpected car repair, Lindsay claimed. We'll take care of it before the trip, my mom assured me. Don't worry so much about the money, Noah. This trip is about family. Around this time, I met up with my friend Mason for our weekly basketball game. As we took a break, I mentioned the upcoming family vacation and the mounting costs. Dude, Mason said, wiping sweat from his face, this sounds like a disaster waiting to happen. They're totally taking advantage of you. It's not that bad. I defended, though I didn't entirely believe it myself. They're family. Family doesn't treat family like an ATM, Mason replied. How much have you spent so far? I calculated quickly. About $12,000 for all the reservations, but they're supposed to pay me back for their portions. Mason gave me a look that said he didn't believe that would happen. And have they paid you back for anything in the past? I had to admit they hadn't, at least not consistently or in full. Mason's questions made me uncomfortable because they forced me to confront what I already suspected. This vacation was quickly becoming another situation where my family's entitlement to my money was overshadowing any genuine desire to spend time together. The next warning sign came 3 weeks before the trip, when my mother suggested a shopping expedition to buy vacation clothes. You can't go to Hawaii without the right attire, she insisted. Let's make a day of it. You, me, and Lindsay. I agreed to the shopping trip, picturing a quick stop at a few stores where everyone would purchase their own items. Instead, it turned into a 5-hour marathon through an upscale mall, with my mother and sister piling clothes, accessories, and even luggage onto checkout counters, then looking expectantly at me when it came time to pay. I didn't bring enough cash, my mother said at the first store, where she had selected 3 designer sundresses. My card is maxed out, Lindsay explained at the sunglasses boutique, holding a pair that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. By the end of the day, I had spent over $2,000 on their vacation wardrobes. When I suggested that this should count toward their portion of the trip expenses, both acted offended. These are necessities, my mother explained. We can't show up looking shabby. What would people think? What people? I wanted to ask. We didn't know anyone in Hawaii. But I swallowed my objection, not wanting to create conflict before the trip even started. The night before our departure, I was packing my suitcase when my phone rang. It was my dad. Noah, quick question. The resort offers a private airport transfer service. It's much nicer than taking a regular taxi or shuttle. Can you call and add that to our reservation? It's only about $200 each way. Dad, that's another $400 that wasn't in the budget. I pointed out. I know, son, but your mother's back has been acting up. A comfortable ride would make a big difference for her. I sighed and agreed to make the arrangement. After hanging up, I sat on the edge of my bed and looked at my credit card statement on my phone. The vacation hadn't even started, and I had already spent over $15,000. With only vague promises of repayment from my family. Still, I tried to remain optimistic. Maybe this trip really would be the bonding experience my parents had promised. Maybe once we were all relaxing in paradise, the financial tensions would fade away, and we could connect as a family in a meaningful way. I finished packing, set my alarm, and tried to quiet the voice in my head that warned me I was being naive. As I drifted off to sleep, I made a decision. I would go on this vacation with an open heart but a firm resolve. I would set a mental limit on additional expenses, and if that limit was reached, I would have to take a stand, regardless of the family fallout. Little did I know how quickly that limit would be tested. Our flight to Kauai was long but uneventful. We landed in Lihue Airport in the late afternoon, the air immediately enveloping us in its warm, fragrant embrace. Despite my financial concerns, I couldn't help but feel a spark of excitement as we collected our luggage and headed to the private transfer service I had arranged. The drive to the resort was stunning, with lush green mountains on one side and glimpses of turquoise ocean on the other. My mother and Lindsay exclaimed over every view, while my father nodded appreciatively at the Mercedes van I had paid for. For a moment, their genuine joy made the expense seem worthwhile. That feeling continued as we arrived at the resort. A sprawling collection of elegant buildings set amid tropical gardens that sloped down to a pristine beach. The lobby was open air, with soaring ceilings and views straight through to the ocean. Staff greeted us with fresh flower leis and cold towels infused with lavender. "This is absolutely magnificent," my mother breathed, squeezing my arm. "Thank you for making this happen, Noah." The warm glow of her approval lasted until the check-in process, when the resort staff asked for a credit card for incidentals. "We'll use my son's card," my mother said before I could even reach for my wallet. "He's taking care of everything." I felt a flicker of annoyance but said nothing as I handed over my card. The resort staff explained that they would place a $1,000 hold on the card for incidentals, which would be released after checkout if not used. $1,000? Lindsay exclaimed. "That's excessive. It's standard for luxury resorts," the staff member explained politely. "Any charges to your rooms or dining will be automatically billed to this card." As we were escorted to our rooms, my father clapped me on the shoulder. "Good thing you make the big bucks, son. This place is first class all the way." Our accommodations were indeed impressive. My parents had a spacious suite with a separate living area and a large balcony overlooking the ocean. Lindsay had a similar room next door. My room, while beautiful, was the smallest of the three and faced the gardens rather than the ocean. I hadn't specified room assignments when booking, leaving it to the resort to allocate based on availability. Somehow, I had ended up with the least desirable accommodation despite paying the most. After settling in, we agreed to meet for dinner at the resort's main restaurant. I arrived first and was seated at a table with a spectacular view of the sunset. When my family joined me, my mother immediately ordered a bottle of champagne. "We should toast to this amazing family vacation," she declared. "And to Noah, who made it all possible." The champagne was followed by multiple appetizers that my mother insisted we all share. Then expensive entrees, and finally desserts all around. Throughout the meal, neither my parents nor Lindsay glanced at prices on the menu. When the check came, my father didn't even pretend to reach for it. The waiter placed it directly in front of me, clearly having been informed that I was handling all expenses. The total for dinner alone was over $600. I paid it without comment, but the pattern had been established for what was to come. The next morning, I awoke to a series of text messages from my mother. She had already booked a catamaran tour of the Na Pali coast for all of us, one of the most expensive excursions offered by the resort at $350 per person. There was also a message about meeting at the pool at 10 a.m., where they had reserved a private cabana for the day at another $200. I headed down to breakfast with a growing sense of unease. My family was already seated, plates filled with the buffet that cost $75 per person. "There you are," my mother greeted me. "I was just telling your father and sister about the tour I booked for us today. It's supposed to be absolutely breathtaking." "I saw your text," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. "That's quite expensive. Did anyone check if there were more affordable options?" My mother's smile faltered slightly. Noah, this is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. The cheaper tours use larger boats, with dozens of other tourists. This one is a small group, premium experience. I understand that, but I wish you had consulted me before booking. We're already spending a lot more than we discussed. This trip isn't about you and your budget spreadsheets, my mother said, her voice taking on an edge. It's about creating family memories that will last a lifetime. That phrase, "This trip isn't about you," hit me like a slap. If the trip wasn't about me, then why was I the one paying for everything? Before I could respond, Lindsay jumped in. Noah, chill out. You're always so uptight about money. Just enjoy yourself for once. My father nodded in agreement. Son, you work so hard. This is your chance to relax and enjoy the fruits of your labor. What's the point of making all that money if you don't spend it? I felt cornered and outnumbered. Rather than create a scene at breakfast, I backed down and changed the subject. We finished eating, and I silently added another $300 to my growing vacation tab. The catamaran tour was admittedly spectacular. The Na Pali coast, with its dramatic emerald cliffs plunging into the Pacific, was even more breathtaking than photos could capture. We saw dolphins and sea turtles, and the cruise served a gourmet lunch with premium wines. Under different circumstances, I would have considered it money well spent. But throughout the tour, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being used. Each time my mother exclaimed over a beautiful sight, or my father raised his wine glass in a toast, I wondered if they would have chosen this expensive option if they were paying for it themselves. When we returned to the resort in the late afternoon, I hoped for some downtime by the pool or beach. Instead, Lindsay announced she wanted to check out the shops at the resort. I forgot to pack a proper beach cover-up, she explained. And Mom needs a new hat. What followed was an hour-long shopping spree through the resort's high-end boutiques. Lindsay selected not just a cover-up, but multiple swimsuits, sundresses, and jewelry. My mother found not only a sun hat but also designer sunglasses and several resort-wear outfits. Once again, when it came time to pay, all eyes turned to me. I didn't bring my wallet down to the pool, my mother explained. My purse is up in the room, Lindsay added. Reluctantly, I handed over my credit card again, watching as another $200 was added to my vacation expenses. That evening, I tried to have a candid conversation with my family about the mounting costs. We were sitting on my parents' balcony before dinner, enjoying the ocean breeze. I'm happy we're all enjoying the vacation, I began carefully. But I'm concerned about how expenses are being handled. We had agreed that everyone would contribute to the cost, but so far I've covered everything. My mother's expression immediately turned hurt. Are you keeping a tally of every dollar spent? Is that what family means to you? That's not fair, I protested. We had an agreement before this trip started. Noah, my father interjected, you make good money. Far more than your mother and I ever did. What's the problem with treating your family to a nice vacation? The problem is that this wasn't presented as me treating everyone, I explained, trying to keep my frustration in check. If that had been clear from the beginning, I might have suggested a different type of vacation within my budget. But there's no budget here. Everyone is just spending freely with my money. After all we've done for you, my mother said, her voice trembling slightly. All the sacrifices we made raising you. And now you're nickel and diming us over a family vacation. Lindsay, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke up. You're being really selfish, Noah. Not everyone is as fortunate as you. Some of us struggle financially. The irony of being called selfish while funding an extravagant vacation for 3 adults was not lost on me, but I could see I wasn't going to win this argument. My family had expertly shifted the narrative. I was the villain for mentioning money, not them for exploiting my finances. Fine, I said, standing up. Let's just enjoy the rest of the vacation. But please be mindful of additional expenses going forward. As I left to return to my own room, I heard my mother say to my father, "He's always been so tight with money. I don't know where he gets it from." That night, I lay awake calculating the damage so far, including the pre-trip expenses, airfare, accommodations, meals, and activities. I had already spent over $20,000, with most of the vacation still ahead of us. At this rate, the final total would be more than I had spent on my entire previous year of living expenses. As I finally drifted off to sleep, I wondered if there was any way to salvage both my bank account and my relationship with my family. The next day would prove that there wasn't. The third day of our vacation began like the previous ones. I woke up to messages from my mother about the day's planned activities, all of which involved significant expense. This time, she had arranged for a private helicopter tour of the island, followed by a guided hike to a secluded waterfall, and ending with a sunset dinner at the most expensive restaurant on the resort property. I was in the shower when my phone pinged with a notification from my credit card company. A charge of $3.200 had just been processed from the resort's activity desk. The helicopter tour for 4 people. By the time I met my family for breakfast, I had reached a state of calm resignation. I would get through this vacation, learn my lesson, and establish firmer boundaries afterward. No need to create family drama in paradise. At least, that's what I told myself. "There's my baby brother," Lindsay called out as I approached the table. "We were just talking about the helicopter tour. Mom says the views are supposed to be incredible. I'm sure they will be," I replied, taking my seat. Though it would have been nice to discuss it before booking, considering the cost. My mother waved a dismissive hand. "Noah, please stop obsessing over money. We're on vacation. This constant talk about expenses is bringing down the mood." "I'm not obsessing," I defended myself. "I'm just suggesting some basic courtesy. A quick text asking, 'Hey, is it okay if I book this $3,200 activity?' would be appreciated." "There you go with the exact dollar amounts again," my father said with a frown. "Your mother put a lot of effort into planning today's activities. You could show a little gratitude." I bit back my response, reminding myself of my resolution to avoid conflict. We finished breakfast in strained silence, and I excused myself to get ready for the helicopter tour. "Meet in the lobby at 11, my mother called after me. "Don't be late." I decided to take a walk on the beach to clear my head before the tour. The resort's stretch of coastline was stunning, with soft white sand and clear turquoise water. I found a quiet spot and sat watching the waves, trying to find some perspective. A part of me knew I should be grateful for the opportunity to experience such a beautiful place with my family. Many people would never have this chance. But another part of me felt deeply resentful at how I was being manipulated and exploited under the guise of family time. After about 30 minutes of reflection, I headed back toward the resort. As I approached, I noticed my family seated at the outdoor bar adjacent to the pool. They hadn't seen me, and I was about to call out when I heard my name mentioned. I paused, partially hidden by a large tropical plant. "Noah's always been such a pushover," Lindsay was saying with a laugh. "Remember how we used to get him to do our chores by telling him he was the only one responsible enough to do them, right?" My mother giggled. "He's so desperate for family time that he'll pay anything. I almost feel bad about the helicopter tour, but not bad enough to cancel it. We might as well get our money's worth," my father added, sipping what looked like an expensive cocktail. "I was thinking we should extend the trip by a couple of days. The resort has availability, and it's not like Noah can't afford it." "Brilliant idea," my mother agreed. "I'll tell him it's because we're having such a wonderful bonding experience that we don't want it to end." "To Noah's credit card," Lindsay said, raising her glass. "The gift that keeps on giving." They all laughed and clinked glasses. I stood frozen, a cold sensation spreading through my chest despite the tropical heat. The casual cruelty of their conversation, the calculated manipulation, The utter disregard for me as anything more than a financial resource, it was all laid bare in that moment. This wasn't about family bonding. It never had been. This was a carefully orchestrated exploitation of my desire for family connection and my financial success. They weren't even subtle about it when I wasn't around. I turned and walked away before they could notice me, my mind racing. Every interaction of the past few days now appeared in a new, harsh light. The excessive spending, the guilt trips when I expressed concern, the constant reinforcement that questioning any expense made me the villain. This wasn't normal family behavior. This was financial abuse. Back in my room, I sat on the edge of the bed, hands shaking slightly as I processed what I had overheard. I had three choices. Continue funding the vacation while swallowing my resentment, confront my family directly, or take more decisive action. The first option was no longer viable. Now that I had heard their true feelings, I couldn't pretend everything was fine. The second option, direct confrontation, seemed unlikely to yield results. Given their skill at deflecting and manipulating emotional conversations, that left the third option. I needed to take control of the situation in a way that couldn't be argued away or emotionally manipulated. I needed to act. I picked up my phone and called my credit card company. After navigating through the automated system, I reached a customer service representative. "Hello, I'd like to discuss options for my account," I began. "I'm currently traveling, and I have concerns about some charges being made." The representative was helpful and understanding as I explained that I needed to restrict future charges without canceling the card entirely. We discussed several options before settling on temporarily freezing the account. This would mean any new charges would be declined, but existing authorizations such as the hotel room would remain valid until checkout. "We can implement this freeze immediately," the representative explained. "And you can unfreeze it at any time through the mobile app if needed." "That sounds perfect," I replied. "Please proceed with the freeze." After ending the call, I researched the resort's payment policies. As I suspected, room keys would be deactivated if the credit card on file was declined for daily room charges. My family would suddenly find themselves unable to charge anything to their rooms or access them without making alternative payment arrangements. Next, I called the front desk and requested a quiet room change. I explained that I needed some privacy from my family for work reasons, and asked that my new room assignment not be disclosed if they inquired. The staff was accommodating, and within an hour, I had moved my belongings to a new room in a different wing of the resort. Finally, I packed a small day bag with essentials, ensuring I had my wallet, phone, ID, and a change of clothes. If things went as expected, I might not want to return to the resort immediately after the confrontation that was sure to come. I checked my watch. It was 10:45 a.m., almost time to meet for the helicopter tour. My plan was now in motion, and there was no turning back. As I headed to the lobby, I felt a strange mixture of anxiety and relief. For the first time in days, I was taking back control. The helicopter tour was scheduled to last about 2 hours, followed by lunch at a remote location, and then the guided hike. My family wouldn't discover the frozen credit card until they tried to pay for something, likely during lunch. By then, we would be far from the resort, and they would have no choice but to listen to what I had to say. As I approached the lobby, I saw my family waiting, all smiles and excitement as if I hadn't just overheard their true feelings about me. My mother waved enthusiastically. "There you are, Noah! Isn't this exciting? A helicopter tour of the entire island." I smiled back, the calm before the storm. Yes, it should be quite an eye-opening experience. And it would be, just not in the way they were expecting. The helicopter tour itself was spectacular, I have to admit. Our pilot, a friendly local named Kai, pointed out hidden waterfalls, remote valleys, and the remarkable colors of Waimea Canyon, often called the Grand Canyon of the Pacific. Under different circumstances, I would have been completely captivated by the experience. Instead, I found myself oddly detached, watching my family's excitement with new eyes. My mother gasped and took countless photos with her new phone, the one I had paid for before the trip. Lindsay posed for selfies against the dramatic backdrop, already planning her social media posts. My father nodded appreciatively at every spectacular vista, occasionally glancing at me as if to confirm I recognized the value of what my money had purchased. Throughout the flight, I remained quiet, responding minimally to their enthusiastic commentary. If they noticed my subdued demeanor, they didn't mention it, too caught up in the experience to worry about my emotional state. After about 90 minutes in the air, Kai landed the helicopter at a remote restaurant perched on a cliff overlooking the ocean. This was the lunch spot included in our tour package. An exclusive dining experience only accessible by helicopter or private boat. "This is absolutely divine," my mother exclaimed as we were led to a table on the terrace. The view was indeed breathtaking, with waves crashing against the rocks below, and the vast Pacific stretching to the horizon. As soon as we were seated, my father ordered a bottle of champagne. "We need to toast to this amazing experience," he declared. My mother and Lindsay eagerly agreed, already studying the menu with its eye-watering prices. "I think I'll have the lobster," my mother announced. "And perhaps we should get a few appetizers for the table. The seafood tower looks wonderful." I nodded and excused myself. "I need to make a quick call before we order. Work emergency. I'll be right back." "Noah, really?" Lindsay rolled her eyes. "Can't you disconnect for even one day?" "It'll just take a minute," I assured her, already walking away from the table. Once out of sight, I found a quiet corner of the terrace and took out my phone. I opened my credit card app and confirmed that the freeze was active. Then I waited. It was 1:37 p.m. The confrontation I had been avoiding for years was about to happen. I returned to the table to find appetizers already ordered and my family sipping champagne. The server was hovering nearby, waiting to take the rest of our order. "Everything okay with work?" my father asked perfunctorily. "All sorted," I replied, taking my seat. "What did I miss?" "We ordered the seafood tower and some sashimi to start," my mother informed me. "The server needs your entree selection." I scanned the menu briefly. "I'll have the catch of the day, please." The server nodded and left to place our orders. I sipped my water, watching my family enjoy their champagne, entirely unaware of what was coming. The appetizers arrived quickly. An impressive display of fresh seafood artfully arranged. My family dug in enthusiastically, exclaiming over the quality and flavor. I picked at a few pieces, my appetite diminished by anticipation. "Noah, you're so quiet," my mother observed between bites of premium tuna. "Aren't you enjoying yourself?" "Just taking it all in," I replied vaguely. The main courses arrived next. Each played a work of culinary art. My mother's lobster was particularly impressive, split and reassembled with various garnishes and sauces. The server refreshed our drinks and asked if we needed anything else. "Another bottle of champagne, I think," my father decided. The meal continued pleasantly enough, with my family chatting about the helicopter tour and making plans for the sunset dinner later. I contributed minimal comments, waiting for the moment that was now inevitable. It came when the server returned with the check, placing it discreetly on the table. My father, in an unusual move, reached for it. "I'll put this on my card," he announced. "Noah's been covering everything. It's the least I can do." I almost laughed at the transparent attempt to appear generous with the smallest expense of our trip so far. But I said nothing, curious to see how this would play out. My father handed his credit card to the server, who returned moments later with a portable payment terminal. He swiped the card, waited, then frowned slightly. "I'm sorry, sir, but the card has been declined. Would you like to try another?" A flash of embarrassment crossed my father's face. "That's odd. Try it again, please." The server did so, with the same result. "Perhaps another card?" My father fumbled in his wallet and produced another credit card. This one was also declined. Noah, can you cover this? He asked, turning to me with the expectation that I would immediately solve the problem as I always did. Actually, I can't, I replied calmly. What do you mean you can't? My mother's voice rose slightly. My card isn't working either, I explained. Don't be ridiculous, she said. Just pay the bills so we can go. I'm not being ridiculous. My card is frozen. A moment of confused silence fell over the table as my family processed this information. What do you mean, frozen? Lindsay asked. I mean, I called my credit card company and froze my account. No new charges can be processed. Why on earth would you do that? My mother demanded, her face flushing. Because I overheard your conversation at the bar this morning, I said, keeping my voice level. About how I'm a pushover. About how I'm so desperate for family time that I'll pay anything. About extending the trip at my expense without even asking me. The color drained from my mother's face. My father shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Lindsay suddenly became very interested in her napkin. Noah, you misunderstood. My mother began. No. I didn't. I cut her off. For once, I understood perfectly. This trip was never about family bonding. It was about taking advantage of me financially, as you've been doing for years. The server, sensing the tension, had discreetly stepped away, but the bill remained unpaid on the table. So what now? My father asked, his embarrassment turning to anger. You're going to strand us here with no way to pay? I brought cash, I said, pulling out my wallet. I counted out enough to cover the meal and a generous tip, placing it with the bill. This lunch is covered. But from now on, you'll need to pay your own way. This is ridiculous, my mother sputtered. We're on a family vacation. Yes, we are, I agreed. And families shouldn't exploit family. You've spent over $20,000 of my money in 3 days without a second thought or a thank you. That ends now. So you're punishing us because we wanted to enjoy our vacation? Lindsay chimed in, her voice indignant. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm establishing boundaries that should have been in place long ago. You're all adults with jobs and income. You can pay for your own expenses like adults do. And what about the resort? My father demanded. The rooms are all on your card. The existing authorizations will remain until checkout, I explained. But no new charges can be added to the rooms. And since the resort requires a valid payment method for daily room charges, your room keys will likely be deactivated when you return. You can't be serious, my mother said, her voice a mixture of shock and outrage. I've never been more serious, I replied. I've also moved to a different room. I'll be continuing my vacation separately. You're abandoning your family in Hawaii? Lindsay's voice rose to a near screech. No. I'm giving my family the opportunity to take financial responsibility for themselves. There's a difference. I stood up from the table, feeling surprisingly calm. The helicopter will take us back to the resort in 20 minutes. I suggest you use that time to figure out your payment arrangements for the rest of the vacation. If you decide you want to go home early, you'll need to change your flights yourselves. Noah, wait. My mother called as I started to walk away. We can talk about this. I turned back. We've had years to talk about this. You never listened. Now you have no choice but to hear me. Enjoy the rest of your vacation. I know I'll enjoy mine. As I walked away, I heard my father cursing and my mother beginning to cry. A part of me felt guilty, but a stronger part felt an overwhelming sense of liberation. For the first time in my adult life, I had stood up to their manipulation and refused to be their financial safety net. The helicopter ride back to the resort was painfully silent. My family alternated between glaring at me and whispering urgently to each other about their options. I gazed out the window, admiring the landscape and feeling the weight of years of resentment beginning to lift from my shoulders. When we landed at the resort, I thanked Kai for the tour and walked quickly toward the lobby, leaving my family behind. I heard my mother call my name, but I didn't turn back. This was their problem to solve now, not mine. As I entered the lobby, I approached the front desk and informed them that I had changed rooms and would be continuing my stay separately from my family. The staff, professional as always, assured me that my new accommodations were ready. And just to confirm, I added, the card on file for my parents' and sister's rooms is no longer valid. They'll need to provide alternative payment. Yes, sir, the staff member replied discreetly. Our system will automatically request updated payment information when they attempt to access any resort services. I nodded and headed to my new room, knowing that the real fallout was yet to come. But for the first time in days, I felt at peace with my decision. Sometimes boundaries need to be established dramatically to be taken seriously. The storm was coming, but I was finally ready for it. I had just settled into my new room when my phone began buzzing incessantly. Text messages, missed calls, and voicemails from my family flooded in. I silenced the notifications and ordered room service, deciding to give myself a few hours of peace before dealing with the inevitable confrontation. The first message I read was from my mother. We're locked out of our rooms. The front desk says we need to provide a new form of payment. How could you do this to us? Call me immediately. The second was from my father, more threatening in tone. This childish stunt ends now. Get down to the lobby and fix this situation, or there will be serious consequences for your relationship with this family. Lindsay's message was perhaps the most revealing. You're ruining everything. Mom is crying in the bathroom, and Dad is yelling at the staff. I had dinner plans tonight, and now everything is messed up. This is so selfish of you. Not one message acknowledged their role in creating this situation or expressed any understanding of why I had taken such drastic action. It was all about how I had wronged them, not how they had wronged me for years. After finishing my meal, I decided it was time to face them. I texted my mother, I'll meet you in the lobby lounge in 30 minutes to discuss next steps. When I arrived at the designated meeting spot, I found all three of them huddled at a table, looking equal parts angry and disheveled. My mother's eyes were red from crying. My father's face was flushed with anger, and Lindsay was furiously typing on her phone, probably complaining to friends about her terrible brother. Finally, my father growled as I sat down. Now fix this mess you've created. I took a deep breath, reminding myself to stay calm and focused. I haven't created any mess. I've simply stopped enabling a situation that should never have existed in the first place. Noah, how could you embarrass us like this? My mother demanded. The staff know all about our situation now. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was? About as humiliating as being used as an ATM by my own family, I imagine. I replied evenly. We never treated you like an ATM, she protested. Really? Let's review the facts. This vacation has cost over $20,000 so far. Almost all of it charged to me without discussion or consent. When I expressed concerns about the spending, I was told, and I quote, "This trip isn't about you." I overheard all of you laughing about how I'm a pushover and planning to extend the trip at my expense. So yes, you absolutely treated me like an ATM. My father leaned forward, his tone shifting from anger to negotiation. Look, son, maybe things got a little out of hand with the expenses. We can discuss that. But freezing your card and moving rooms? That's an extreme overreaction. Is it? Because I've tried discussing finances with all of you many times over the years. Those discussions always end the same way, with guilt trips, emotional manipulation, and nothing changing. This time, I needed you to actually hear me. We're hearing you now, my mother said, her voice softening. We understand you're upset about the money. We can work something out. This isn't just about the money, I explained. It's about respect. It's about treating me like a person with boundaries rather than a resource to be exploited. It's about acknowledging that my financial success doesn't make me responsible for funding everyone else's lifestyle. Lindsay, who had been surprisingly quiet, finally spoke up. So what now? Are you going to leave us stranded here? You're not stranded. You're all employed adults with credit cards and income. You have options. Our cards are maxed out, she admitted. And we don't have enough cash for the rest of the vacation. Then you have two choices, I said. You can cut the vacation short and return home. Or you can scale back your expectations and live within your means for the remainder of the trip. My father scoffed. And how exactly are we supposed to do that when we can't even access our rooms? You'll need to provide the front desk with a valid credit card for the remaining charges. If your cards are truly maxed out, you could call your banks and request emergency credit line increases. You could transfer balances to create available credit. You could contact friends or other family members for help. So you're really not going to help us? My mother asked, tears welling up again. After all we've done for you? What exactly have you done for me lately? I asked quietly. Because from where I'm sitting, our relationship has been one-sided for years. I give, you take. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table as my words sank in. For perhaps the first time, they were being forced to confront the reality of our dynamic without the ability to deflect or manipulate. My father was the first to break. Fine. I'll call the bank and request a credit limit increase. But this conversation isn't over, Noah. No, it isn't, I agreed. In fact, it's just beginning. Because after this vacation, we need to have a serious discussion about expectations and boundaries going forward. I stood up, ready to end the conversation before it deteriorated further. I'll be continuing my vacation separately. I suggest you use this time to reflect on why we've reached this point. I know I will be. As I walked away, I heard my mother call after me. Noah! Please don't do this. We're family. I turned back one last time. Yes, we are. And that should mean something more than financial obligation. The next day, I deliberately avoided the main areas of the resort, opting instead for a solo hiking excursion arranged through a local company. When I returned in the late afternoon, I received a text from Lindsay that was surprisingly conciliatory. Dad got his credit limit increased. We're back in our rooms. Mom's been crying all day. I'm still mad at you. But I get why you did it. Kind of. Can we talk? I agreed to meet her at the beach bar, away from our parents. When I arrived, she was already there, nursing a non-alcoholic smoothie rather than her usual expensive cocktail. So, she began awkwardly. That was intense. It was necessary, I replied, ordering an iced tea. Things couldn't continue as they were. She nodded slowly. I've been thinking about what you said. About being treated like an ATM. I never really saw it that way before. How did you see it? She shrugged. I guess I thought you were just being generous because you could afford to be. And because you know your family. There's a difference between generosity and exploitation. Lindsay. Generosity is freely given. What's been happening is that my financial support has become expected, even demanded. Yeah, I can see that now. She looked down at her drink. For what it's worth, I'm sorry for taking advantage. And for the things I said at the bar. That was pretty awful. Her apology, though limited, seemed genuine. It was more acknowledgement than I had ever received from her before. Thank you for saying that, I said. It means a lot. So what happens now? With the family, I mean. That depends on whether everyone is willing to establish healthier patterns. This isn't about punishing anyone. It's about creating relationships based on mutual respect rather than financial dependency. She nodded thoughtfully. Mom and Dad are having a harder time with this. They're pretty angry and embarrassed. I understand that. Change is difficult, especially when it challenges long-established dynamics. But it's necessary. We talked for almost an hour. More openly than we had in years. Lindsay admitted that she had fallen into patterns of financial irresponsibility because there had never been consequences. She knew I would always bail her out. She also revealed that our parents had been struggling financially more than they let on, which partly explained their increasing reliance on me. That doesn't excuse their behavior, I said. But it helps me understand it better. By the time we parted, we had reached a tentative new understanding. Lindsay agreed to work on her financial independence, and I promised to support her efforts in ways that didn't involve simply handing over money. My parents were less receptive. For the next 2 days, they avoided me entirely, opting to dine at different times and stick to different areas of the resort. I occasionally spotted them from a distance, my mother looking teary and my father grim-faced. On the 5th day of our vacation, I received a text from my mother asking if we could talk. We met on the beach during sunset, the beautiful backdrop at odds with the tension between us. "Your father didn't want me to come," she began. "But I couldn't leave things like this. I appreciate you reaching out," I said. She sighed deeply. "I don't understand why you felt you needed to humiliate us to make your point. That wasn't my intention. But I needed to create a situation where you would actually hear me instead of dismissing my concerns as you've always done before." "We've never dismissed your concerns," she protested. "Mom, every time I've tried to discuss financial boundaries, you've shut me down with guilt trips about everything you did for me growing up. You've made me feel selfish for not wanting to bankroll everyone's lifestyle." She was quiet for a moment, watching the waves. "Is that really how you see us? As taking advantage of you?" "It's not how I want to see you," I said honestly. "But yes, that's what's been happening. And it's damaged our relationship." "I never meant for that to happen," she said softly. "I guess I just got used to you being the successful one, the one who could fix everything. It made me proud, in a way. I want you to be proud of me," I admitted. "But not just as a financial resource. I want you to see me as a whole person, with boundaries and needs of my own." We talked for over an hour as the sun sank below the horizon. Unlike previous conversations, I didn't back down when she tried to shift blame or minimize the issue. I calmly but firmly held my ground, explaining exactly how their behavior had affected me over the years. By the end, we hadn't resolved everything, but we had at least established a new foundation for communication. My mother agreed to talk to my father and suggested a family dinner the following night to discuss how to move forward. That dinner was tense but productive. My father, while still clearly resentful of being forced into this position, grudgingly acknowledged that the family's financial dynamics needed to change. We established some preliminary boundaries. I would no longer be expected to cover everyday expenses or bailouts. Financial discussions would be explicit rather than implicit. And any gifts I chose to give would be at my sole discretion rather than by family demand. "This vacation is a wash," my father concluded bluntly. "But when we get home, we'll figure out a better way forward." It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was a start. The remainder of the vacation passed in an uneasy truce. We did a few activities together, now with clear discussions about who was paying for what, and spent other times apart. The carefree family vacation my mother had envisioned was gone, replaced by something more complicated but ultimately more honest. As we prepared to return home, I reflected on how a single act of standing firm had completely altered our family dynamic. The frozen credit card had done what years of conversations couldn't. It had forced a reckoning with unhealthy patterns that had been in place for far too long. My phone buzzed with a text from Mason. "How's paradise with the family?" I replied. "Complicated, but better than before." I finally stood up for myself. His response came quickly. "About damn time. Proud of you, man." And for the first time in a long while, I was proud of myself too. It's been 6 months since our eventful family vacation to Hawaii. And I'm sitting on the balcony of my Seattle apartment, watching rain patter against the windows in typical Pacific Northwest fashion. The weather couldn't be more different from those sun-drenched days on Kauai, but my mind often returns to that pivotal moment when I finally took control of my family relationships. The aftermath wasn't easy. When we returned home, there was a period of distance and coolness. My parents, particularly my father, struggled to adjust to the new dynamic. For weeks, our communication was minimal and strained. Lindsay, surprisingly, became a bridge between us, having taken our beach bar conversation to heart more than I expected. About a month after the vacation, I decided to seek professional help. I found a therapist specializing in family dynamics, Dr. Samantha Wright, who helped me understand the patterns that had developed over years. What you're describing is common in families where one member achieves significantly more financial success than others, she explained during one session. Roles become fixed money provider, money receiver, and breaking those patterns requires a fundamental restructuring of relationships. Through therapy, I began to recognize my own role in enabling the unhealthy dynamics. Yes, my family had taken advantage, but I had allowed it to happen, seeking their approval and love through financial support. I had equated being needed with being valued, a pattern that extended beyond my family into other relationships as well. Boundaries aren't just for others, Dr. Wright reminded me. They're for you too. They define where you end and others begin, which is essential for healthy relationships. These insights were painful but necessary for my growth. I realized that my resentment toward my family had been building for years, corroding my love for them. By avoiding conflict and giving in to their demands, I had actually been damaging our relationships rather than preserving them. 3 months after our return, I invited my parents to dinner at a modestly priced restaurant, a deliberate choice to set the tone. To my surprise, they accepted, and even more surprisingly, they arrived with a handwritten budget they had created with the help of a financial advisor. We've been doing some thinking, my father said, uncharacteristically humble. And some work on ourselves too. My mother nodded. Lindsay told us about her conversation with you on the beach. About how we've been taking advantage without realizing it. We didn't want to hear it at first, but deep down, we knew she was right. They explained that they had met with a financial planner who had helped them understand their actual financial situation and create a sustainable budget based on their own income. They had also begun to address some unhealthy spending habits that had contributed to their reliance on me. We're not asking for your help with any of this, my father clarified. We just wanted you to know that we're taking responsibility for ourselves. It was one of the most meaningful gestures they had ever made, a concrete demonstration that they were willing to change rather than just offering empty words. I felt a knot of tension I had carried for years begin to loosen. Lindsay's transformation was perhaps the most dramatic. She had taken a hard look at her financial habits and made significant changes. She picked up extra shifts at her job, created her first ever budget, and even started a small side business doing social media management for local businesses. I've been acting like a teenager with their first credit card, she admitted during a coffee meetup. But I'm 30 years old. It was time to grow up. She proudly showed me her newly established emergency fund, small but growing, and told me she had made her first student loan payment in years. When I offered to help her develop a debt repayment strategy, she accepted the advice but not financial assistance, a significant shift from our previous dynamic. As for me, I was learning to express love and support in ways that didn't involve opening my wallet. I helped my father update his resume when he decided to look for a better-paying job. I spent time teaching my mother how to use digital tools to manage household finances. I connected Lindsay with professional contacts who could help her grow her side business. These contributions of time, knowledge, and genuine interest strengthened our relationships in ways that money never could. We were finally relating to each other as adults, with mutual respect rather than financial dependency. There were setbacks, of course. Old habits don't disappear overnight. There were still occasions when expectations crept in. Subtle hints about financial needs or assumptions about who would pay for family gatherings. But now I had the confidence to address these moments directly instead of silently fuming or reluctantly giving in. For months after Hawaii, we had our first full family dinner since the vacation. It was at my parents' house, a potluck where everyone contributed something. The conversation was lighter, more genuine than it had been in years. We talked about our lives, our interests, our challenges without the undercurrent of financial manipulation that had previously colored our interactions. After dinner, my mother pulled me aside. "I want you to know something," she said, her eyes serious. "I'm sorry for how we treated you, for taking your generosity for granted. You deserve better from us." It was the apology I had needed but never expected to receive. "Thank you," I said simply, giving her a hug. My father's acknowledgement came in his own way. He asked for my advice on negotiating a better salary at his new job prospect, not because he wanted me to supplement his income, but because he respected my professional insight. It was a small shift, but a meaningful one. Looking back now, I can see that freezing my credit card in Hawaii was more than just a stand against financial exploitation. It was a declaration of my worth beyond my bank account, a reclaiming of my place in my family as a person rather than a resource. The experience taught me that real family love isn't transactional. It doesn't come with a price tag or expectations of financial support. Real love is built on mutual respect, understanding, and genuine care for each other's well-being. I've also learned that setting boundaries, while initially painful, can ultimately heal relationships rather than harm them. By clearly defining what I was and wasn't willing to do financially, I created space for healthier connections to grow. Next month, we're planning another family vacation, a weekend at a mountain cabin that we're all contributing to equally, according to our means. It won't be as luxurious as Hawaii, but I know it will be more meaningful. This time, we'll be creating genuine memories instead of charging them to my credit card. As I finish writing this, I realize that my journey is far from over. Building healthy family dynamics is an ongoing process, not a destination. There will be more challenges, more moments when boundaries need to be reasserted, more growth for all of us. But for the first time in years, I'm genuinely optimistic about our future as a family. Not because everything is perfect now, but because we're finally being honest with each other. And that honesty, painful though it sometimes is the foundation of authentic connection. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who took advantage of your generosity? How did you handle it, and what was the outcome? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to see more content about navigating complicated family dynamics. Remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do for others and for yourself is to establish clear boundaries. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you courage in your own journey toward healthier relationships.